But then, what happened was, and it's kind of funny to think about, because when they came back and they said, oh, we do want you for this book, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Total Nutrition.
Right.
First off, it's like a joke what they paid me for my advance. And it just gave me enough money. Maybe I had to add a little bit to buy a laptop computer. And I have to tell you, Scott, I would have paid them. I couldn't even believe they were paying me to write the book. I was so excited to get a book deal. I'm like, here's my checkbook. What do I owe you? Kind of a thing.
Today's episode is also brought to you by MindBloom. It's time to enter the next chapter of mental health with MindBloom, the leader in at-home ketamine therapy. Get $100 off your first 6-session program when you sign up at mindbloom.com/path and use promo code PATH at checkout. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Savlova, and welcome to The Path here. And with me, Joy Bauer. And Joy, the best way to describe you is you're a media phenomenon from the aspect that there is not one platform you do not have a show or a presence talking about health, lifestyle, fitness at times, but it's really about nutrition and making people make better choices. Is that a great way, or at least a fair way to describe you?
I think that's a fantastic way. And I really appreciate that, because what my mission is to just show people that eating healthy and making smart lifestyle choices in a positive direction can help to elevate every single aspect of your life. And by the way, it's not hard. And it doesn't have to be extreme or radical. A few sort of tweaks here and there could make a markedly huge difference, really. And that's what I hear from people over and over again. I just try to keep it positive and, more importantly, delicious.
Well, that part I want to get to. For me, and looking at the body of your work, which is amazing, and it's like, how does she actually relax? Because it seems like you would have to be busy like 24/7. Which is great for your brand. But at the same time, what really was your goal when you were a kid? I mean, describe for me first your hometown, your upbringing in your hometown.
Oh gosh, I feel really lucky because my hometown was very colorful. It was very, very diverse in every aspect. And so I grew up in Rockland County, which is right outside New York City. It's over the Tappan Zee Bridge. Most people know Nyack. Right. So it's a little town called Tappan right next to Nyack. And you're from New Jersey. So you're pretty close to me for sure. Yeah. And I was one of 4 kids, and I was the oldest. And that's sort of important because my father, who is like a total sportsaholic fanatic, he loves every single sport under the sun. He likes participating in the sports. He likes watching the sports. I mean, there wasn't a second within my house that a football game or a basketball game wasn't on the TV. Multiple tubes were probably going at the same time so he can watch, whatever was playing. And, I was the first. So I was sort of like the son that was supposed to come out and join him in all of the sports. But here I was, a little girl, and he recruited me into his athletic passion. And so that was sort of the beginning for me. I had this affinity towards physical activity and sports, and then the food stuff came a little bit later. But I loved it.
What sports did you play?
So in the beginning, I played everything. I loved to run with him. I played basketball. I played softball. I was on softball teams. But by 6th grade, I was a competitive gymnast. And to know me, so we're virtual right now, but I am maybe 5 feet tall when I sort of stand up straight and have great posture.
In heels. You go in heels on 5'1".
No. Let's get one thing straight. My flat feet, I am 5 feet tall. And that's what it says on my driver's license.
There you go.
But I became a competitive gymnast, and that was really like my world from sixth grade on. And God bless my parents. I mean, they traveled around. They had three kids after me, and they would pack everybody up in the car, sometimes on airplanes, and they never missed a competition. And
Wow.
I loved it. I loved it so much. And then of course, when you're really into sports,
Right.
the food piece is just sort of, that perfect complement. I was always looking to optimize my performance and how I could be stronger and faster and better. And so I was always, playing with food and trying to figure out what was like the perfect menu.
For you, was your home life growing up as a gymnast? You're perpetually conscious of weight and strength, right?
Mm-hmm.
And beyond the flexibility and all those kinds of things, but the weight and the strength, healthy eating at home. I mean, did you have that as like a role model of, oh, my mom was a great cook and she cooked healthy, or is it no?
No. No, like if anything, I was the driving force to instituting healthful foods in the house. My mom was a comfort food cook, and I really grew up on things like mac and cheese and oatmeal raisin cookies and ring dings and devil dogs. I mean, she had what was known as the candy drawer. It was unbelievable, and you would like pull it out, and everything Willy Wonka would
It was right
design,
there.
it was unbelievable. And all of my friends used to come over to my house because they knew we had the best snacks ever. But it's an interesting thing too, because when you grow up with it and it's all accessible and available, I mean, you eat normal portions of them and like not so exciting, right? So I had a little bit here and there. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved my yodels. Oh my God, remember the
I
Drake's
love
coffee
that.
cakes?
I
The
haven't
two
heard
packs.
yodel in a long. I love those.
And
You can
and the yodels,
unravel them, right? Right.
yes! I was
I
just going to
love
say you
that.
peel off the
Yeah.
outside chocolate and then you
Yeah.
unravel them. And then what were they called? Something like Swiss rolls that were the larger ones.
Yeah.
You only got one in the pack.
In a plastic wrap, where the yodels were like almost in a tinfoil wrap. I remember that.
Can you
And then
believe like this
and
is what the nutritionist is talking about
right,
right now?
exactly. And then, I'm going to get into like Yankee Doodles, and you're like, oh, they were great too, because they had the
Yeah,
great
they had three.
and the
Didn't
icing on all three. And you're like, wow, do I really? It's almost like a
we
Seinfeld
had all
moment.
of them?
Do you want to eat
We
the
had
bottom of it or just the top of it? Because the top of it was phenomenal, and the rest of it was just okay.
But let's be real. The Drake's coffee cakes, all that you really needed was the crumble top. I
Right.
mean, the bottom was actually just a vehicle to hold it so
Right.
that you could like scrape off or you could pick off that crumble top. I mean, that was gold. Yeah,
You know
that's what
what?
I grew up on.
I will say to you, our mothers probably shopped at, I worked at a ShopRite, mind you. So I know this. My mom had the same cabinet when I was a kid to when my own kids knew her cabinet. And it was like when my girls were sick and they would go and stay at grandma's house during the day or something, like they were as happy as a lark because they had Pop-Tarts. They had all these things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Mom. And she's like, stop.
Yeah.
Didn't do bad for you.
Right. It's
And
a
I'm like,
grandma privilege.
right,
So
right.
you'll get a kick out of this. So like at this point, when I had my kids, I was already, well into my health journey and my career. And, truth be told, at this point, like my parents had already turned over their whole home. Because even in high school, when I started researching and getting into nutrition, before I got a degree in nutrition, I bought in all of, the white bread was out, the whole grain bread was in. We never had soda anymore. We were drinking lots of water, fruits and
Wow.
vegetables everywhere. So we had already done a whole turnover. But then when I got married and, my kids had two sets of grandparents, my husband's parents, oh my goodness, they were like the furthest thing from the nutrition world. So I always remember my kids went to stay with them for a couple of days and they came back and they're like, Mom, we have to buy, there is this breakfast food called Fruit Loops, which is the most delicious thing that we've ever tasted. We had it sometimes for lunch too. And I said, oh my goodness, I think I once tasted it, but they only sell it in Long Island.
Right.
You can't get it anywhere else. So you'll have to wait until the next time you go back there.
And as soon as they got their driver's license, they're like, hey, guess what's now in the stores here? Fruit Loops.
Oh
It's
my
amazing.
God.
They've moved from Long Island to,
Right. It's like
your
great
area.
distribution. Wow.
How did you make the decision? You go off to University of Maryland where you got your undergrad. Kinesiology. How does one find kinesiology?
So, I knew when I went to Maryland, I went to college on a gymnastics scholarship.
Okay.
And at that point, I was at James Madison University in Virginia. Sure. Because I went for, believe it or not, I didn't go for the academics. I'm embarrassed to say this. I went because they had a, fabulous gymnastics team. So okay. I go there on scholarship. I end up having a horrific accident. I shatter both of my feet. I wind up back in New York at Hospital for Special Surgery for many, many operations. And at that point, I have a decision to make. Am I going to go back to Madison and finish my college degree or start fresh somewhere else? And while I was in the hospital, I became so fascinated with the medical world. And I'm a science nerd at heart. And so I decided to go to University of Maryland. At this point, I was only a sophomore. So I went, the main part of my sort of college experience was being a terp at University of Maryland. And I met with advisors there and I told them about, my sports background. And even though I wasn't competing anymore in gymnastics, I had a huge passion for sports and physical activity. Yet I also really wanted to get into the sciences and be pre-med. So whoever the advisor was really steered me in the right direction. She told me about kinesiology, which is basically merging anatomy and physiology and exercise physiology. And then I minored in biochem. So I was pre-med thinking that I was going to go on and take the MCATs. And ultimately, I wanted to become a pediatrician.
Wow.
So that was the University of Maryland experience. But I loved it. I loved it. And even though I wasn't competing anymore with gymnastics, I went to all the gymnastic meets. I knew a lot of the gymnasts just from the competitive world. Right. And as soon as my feet were better, I started teaching aerobics at all of the clubs around the DC area and Maryland. I couldn't be stopped.
That's awesome. What was your first job then coming out of Maryland?
So when I graduated from Maryland, I was set to take the MCATs, but I decided to take a sabbatical and get a graduate degree at NYU in clinical nutrition. And that for me was the pivotal moment. It was my first class. It was like a nutrition 101 sort of a thing. And the light bulb truly went off. Here, I had always had a passion for playing with food. I love the health world. I have the gift of gab. I love working with people. And by the way, I love to eat. And I think most people who get into nutrition, it's not because we love steamed broccoli and plain boiled chicken. It's because we are enamored with the textures and the combinations and all of the ethnic cuisines that are out there. And that was me. And to think that I would be able to help people merge the beloved classics and the foods that they love with a healthy outcome was hugely exciting to me. So the very first job that I had, I was the director of nutrition for pediatric cardiology out of Mount Sinai Medical Center. And it's interesting because most people know me for TV and media, but really the whole entire first half of my career was in clinical and academics.
You just need to take better care of yourself is not a response to mental health struggles. And sometimes you need something more to achieve a real and lasting breakthrough. Maybe it's time you check out a guided ketamine therapy program from MindBloom. MindBloom is the leader in at-home ketamine therapy, offering a combination of science-backed medicine with clinician and guided support for people looking to improve their mental health and well-being. MindBloom will send you a kit in the mail complete with medicine, treatment materials, and tips for getting the most out of your experience. For me, I suffer from anxiety, and lots of times that anxiety is enhanced by claustrophobic things. I tried Mind Bloom, and for me it worked. Right now, Mind Bloom is offering our listeners $100 off your first 6-session program when you sign up at mindbloom.com/path and use promo code PATH at checkout. Go to mindbloom.com/path, promo code PATH for $100 off your first 6-session program today. That's mindbloom.com/path, promo code PATH. For you, you taught also at your grad alma mater at NYU.
Yes,
right?
so I taught anatomy and physiology, and I taught sports nutrition. And you know what? I loved every single job I ever had, regardless of the paycheck. I did these nonprofit programs in Harlem and East Harlem. And ironically, that was probably the most rewarding job I've ever had. And it was also the most least paying job I've had. And it's funny how that works out sometimes.
But it also has the most impact and probably grounded you to understand the direction that you could take people by teaching them these things can actually make an effect on lifestyle. Where I would imagine it was challenging in some ways teaching, probably the kids that were in your class or come to your class at NYU had an understanding of nutrition or health or something of that nature. But to get college students to become healthy eaters is an ongoing battle, right? I mean,
oh my goodness. Well, everyone, when you think about it, it doesn't matter where you are in life, changing your lifestyle habits is really, really hard. And I think that working with real people actually is the only reason that I'm a good communicator and I can be impactful because, when you graduate from school, you think you're oozing with smarts, right? Here I am. I only got A's in college. I had all of these diplomas. I was, chock full of textbook academic smarts. And that's great. But working with real people is totally different. And what's going to work for somebody is not necessarily going to work for somebody else. And hey, even if you give somebody the advice and the tools and the tips, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have accessibility to healthful foods and the things that you're recommending. And, that goes back to when I was working in Harlem and East Harlem, and even college kids, they're on a budget. They don't necessarily have access to a kitchen. So I think having all of these different jobs helped to make me so much more compelling and impactful as a communicator, because you have to understand your audience. And I always tell people that are getting into the field, I think the biggest piece of advice I can give anyone who's starting out in the healthcare field is to listen more than you talk. Because we can't solve problems or give advice until we really know where people are at. And sometimes it's surprising.
And I would think for you in that kind of look, when Maryland, at least my memory or knowledge of it, it was pretty diverse campus compared to other schools. Coming back to the New York area, pretty diverse area. I mean, if you have an intolerance for other people, tough place, because culture and different cultures, that's an attraction of going to New York. When I live in San Diego, and I'm not saying San Diego is bad, it has diversity, but it's different. You come to New York, there's no shortage of diversity.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, if you're teaching and you're doing academics, to then go into different cultures, like going to Uptown to Harlem, and then understanding that some people don't have it as easy as other people, even on the health and nutrition side of things, probably, to your point about communication, you have to be able to, if you're going to resonate and the things you say can be heard and digested, then you have to change probably what you were communicating in some
the message.
ways.
No, you're exactly right. You have to really know your audience and then make sure that the advice that you're touting is manageable and realistic. And sometimes like small little bite-size digestible pieces so that they're meaningful. And even now to this day, so here I am, I have this great big media platform. And whenever I give advice, I think to myself, okay, I want this advice to resonate with a fancy schmancy Park Avenue cardiologist who
Right.
probably knows a lot about a lot of things, but also, Betty who lives in Iowa, who maybe weighs over 300 pounds, can't get off the couch and doesn't necessarily have access to fresh produce. And it's always a challenge, but it makes it exciting to me because I want to resonate with all different kinds of people. I want to be able to inspire and motivate. And so there's a way to do it. But
Well, and for
it's
you,
definitely interesting.
I would think for you, that's, in looking at if people kind of delve into Joy Bauer, then you go, oh, she's got a free newsletter. And to your point, in today's world, you're making that newsletter touch on those kind of points. Or if you're going on your website or on your Instagram, you're finding different options and things that can kind of touch every life, no matter whether you can afford things, you have access to things, you're kind of giving people those options. Before I get into your media stuff, for me, as an example, we talk about our parents, and I guess maybe too many ding dongs, ring dings, whatever, the ho hos, all of those great treats that I had as a kid. But hereditarily, I have high cholesterol. And I've been told that, right? So you go and you get this kind of sobering conversation with the cardiologist. You do this full health benefit and you go through it and they say, hey, your cholesterol is really high. And I'm like, I work out like every day.
Right.
And they're like, well, you got to cut down on your saturated fats and your sugars. And, do you do this and you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of think I do. And I may not do it to that effect. And you go on your website or on your newsletter and you do touch on those kinds of things, high cholesterol. And so my question to you is just the typical person. Have you seen things that just have to become a staple, not just the fitness element and cardio and all these kinds of things, because that's really a lifestyle aptitude.
Right.
But for you, hey, you really need to incorporate this to really make an impact point. I'm like everyone else, you're always looking for the magic drug, but you don't want to necessarily get addicted to the wrong things or necessarily
Right.
be dependent necessarily on medication. To me, it's lifestyle.
Right.
What have you seen over from your academia now to full practice?
Right. Okay. And that's a really, really great question. And there were so many things that you just said that I want to comment on.
Sure.
I'm going to start with maybe a magic bullet, so to speak, because I think to your point, there is actually something that people can do. And no matter what you're dealing with, whether it's aches and pains from osteo or rheumatoid arthritis, or from playing too much golf, or if it's high cholesterol because it's from poor eating habits, or because it's hereditary, or high blood pressure, or you're overweight, or you're just looking to slow down age-related cognitive decline. The one thing that I would tell everybody to do that could impact you in a huge way is to incorporate a produce item with each and every meal. And that's because a few things. When I say produce, I mean plant-based food, vegetables and fruits, and heavy on the vegetables. The reason is because produce is high volume and
Right.
it's low in calories, so it fills you up without filling you out. And there's so many issues that are weight related. If you gain weight, you're at higher risk for everything from back pain to arthritis to high cholesterol to heart issues. And so that would be the first reason. But I think way more importantly than a weight management focus is that produce is packed with vitamins, minerals, fiber, and antioxidants, and they shower your body with all of the right stuff to help you thrive on every single level. So we're talking if in the morning, if you have an omelet, make sure that you put in there mushrooms and onions and spinach. If you have oatmeal, make sure you're putting colorful berries on top of that oatmeal. For lunch, have a voluminous salad with 5 different vegetables in it. Or if you have a sandwich, lift up that top slice of bread and don't make it just sad lettuce. Put cucumbers and roasted peppers and red onions on there. Like the more, the better. And it's a fatter sandwich then. So it's like I'm telling people to add versus take away. And with dinner, the sky's the limit, right? You could start with a vegetable soup, and then you could have, a piece of salmon with sauteed spinach or broccoli or a medley of roasted squash and all sorts of things on the side. But if you get in those produce items with each and every meal, and I don't think people need to even get fixated on the amounts, just get it in, you will exponentially elevate your health. And you will reduce the risk for so many different ailments and health conditions and diseases that are out there.
Hey, it's Scott, and let's talk about one of the sponsors in today's show, and that's Vuori. Vuori is a clothing company made right here in Encinitas, California, where I live. And for me, with my arm like this in a cast, Vuori makes great products. It's got a very loose-fitting, nice, comfortable t-shirt, real stretchy, feels great on my skin. I put on my Vuori vest over it, which keeps me nice and warm. Vuori makes clothing to work out. However, you don't need to wear it to work out. You can wear it wherever you go, whether it's the store, the movies, to dinner, wherever you go, you can wear your Vuori. And most importantly, by going on vuori.com/path, you get 20% off your purchase. That's Vuori, VUORI.com/path. And get 20% off your purchase. So obviously from that answer and the passion that you had, you conveyed in a really nice, pleasant, easily digested way for someone to hear it. How did you go from academia to the Today Show?
Yeah, by accident. By complete and total accident. So what happened was, while I was doing my thing, I was at Mount Sinai Medical Center. I was running programs in Harlem. I was building a private practice, which I can't even believe I'm saying this. It soon became the largest nutrition center in the country. We had 16 different registered dietitians with masters and PhDs in different subspecialties working for me, and we would get referrals from all around the globe. I mean, doctors, specialists, from liver transplant doctors were flying people in. It was unbelievable. So while I was doing all of this, I love to speak and I love to write. And so I was writing all different articles, and first I was doing free newsletters, and then, I started getting some articles in some of the fancy glossy magazines, and then I got my first book deal. And
and mind you, to your point, and I'll take this just a second, because you've written what? You've had 13 bestsellers?
I have had a bunch. I've had a lot of good fortune
either
in
12 or
the
13,
book arena.
But to your point is, you definitely have not lost your passion. But how did you get your first, before you get into the Today Show, how did you get your first book deal, and how did you come up with the idea for what you wanted to convey in that first book?
So this is a funny story, and I don't think I've ever been asked this question before.
There we go.
And I love the question, Scott. So I had this idea to write a book called Eating Your Way Through College and Surviving. And when I get excited about something, I get excited. Like my heart was racing a million miles a minute. I thought like this was the next best thing since sliced bread, whole wheat bread. And so I met with an agent, and the way that I got
bread, that is,
multigrain bread. That's right. And so I, through a favor, through a friend of a friend of a friend, somebody got me in with an agent. Now, I didn't know from an agent. And so I have this meeting with an agent. He was out of ICM, and I tell him my idea, and he says, "Holy smokes, this is a great idea." And I had each chapter formulated, like how to avoid the freshman 15, and how to, eat on a budget, how to eat off campus, what to choose in the campus cafeteria. Like it was very, very college centric. And he said, "Wow, there's no book like this out there. This is going to make us so rich. This is the best book idea I have ever had." So I skipped home. I was so excited. I told my husband, "Oh my God, we're going to hit the jackpot. This is going to be unbelievable." And I imagined the New York Times being released, and I was number one on the bestseller list. And so he sent the idea. I formulated a book proposal, which by the way, took me 8 months to write.
Right.
I didn't know how to write a book proposal.
Right.
No. And so I write this book proposal, and he sends it to all of the big publishers. And then one after another, they all came back with rejection letters.
Right.
And each of them said exactly the same thing, which was very, very interesting. I was sort of ahead of my time. They said, college students do not care about nutrition. And by the way, they were right, because at the time they didn't. And the parents won't buy it for them. They're too busy buying care packages with all of the junk food. Right. So while it's a good idea, it's not for us, but thank you very much. So it was no, 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 no. 8 proposals went out, 8 rejection letters came back.
Terrible.
But
right.
Then Simon & Schuster soon followed up and said, "Hey, we remember that you sent this proposal from Joy, and it was called, Eating Your Way Through College and Surviving. We don't like her for that book, but we're coming out with an idiot series." Now, do you remember there was the Dummies Guides and the Idiot Guides? We're coming out with an idiot series to rival the Dummies series, and we love her for our idiot nutrition book. So I came out with the complete Idiot's Guide to Total Nutrition. I was an idiot writer.
Well, which most college students are anyway. So you kind of hit the same, your demo anyway.
True. There's some definite truth to that.
I have to say, I actually think that your concept should be a curriculum.
Right.
I speak to so many different people, and they talk about college and, oh, my kid's doing this, my kid's doing that. And, we both have kids that just graduated, and it's like, oh yeah, what did they do? And I always think to myself, did you open a bank account? Did you do this? And there's nothing practical coming out of a college where how to interview. Oh yeah, they talk, broadcasting college. Oh, they talked about it going to an interview. Okay. No. Do you have an actual curriculum of telling them what to do and how to be ready for the real world? And your book idea, to me, that's real world stuff. If as a father of 2 daughters, nothing would bother girls more than with their friends and what have you, that girls would go off to school and then they put on weight, and how am I going to get weight off?
No, you're right.
So as much as all those rejection letters may have been, I still think it's curriculum based. I think that you should have that, in my opinion, should be like a course that each school has, because that's what parents ultimately have to deal with when their kids come home and they're upset. So
okay, Scott, I have a different idea. Yeah, Scott, here's the idea. You're going to develop the real world curriculum, and I'm going to be a guest speaker for one of the modules. So one of the modules will be about nutrition and, how to be healthy.
I honestly think, when you said that, you're saying this was the theme of my book, I'm going, I'm the opposite. I'm the opposite. Except, of all those publishers.
But it's a different time. It really is a different time. And, they know their audience and they're tracking sales. So I have to give them the credit for making the right decision at that time, for sure.
Right.
But then, what happened was, and it's kind of funny to think about, because when they came back and they said, "Oh, we do want you for this book, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Total Nutrition."
Right.
First off, it's like a joke what they paid me for my advance. And it just gave me enough money. Maybe I had to add a little bit to buy a laptop computer. And I have to tell you, Scott, I would have paid them. I couldn't even believe they were paying me to write the book. I was so excited to get a book deal. I'm like, "Here's my checkbook. What do I owe you?" kind of a thing.
Well,
But
on that note, when I wrote a book, it was writing, I self-published.
oh yeah,
And
it's
that is
hard.
brutal. Oh, I had a publisher and it's like, oh yeah, he does coffee table books. Great. He does the Olympics books. Great. And all of a sudden it's like book signings. That's where you make your money. It's like, it's like in today's music. It's not about, your culture anymore of writing and getting advances from the record labels like you used to. It's
Right,
now about
right.
concert tours. And for
Yeah.
me, coffee table book on comfort food of golf. It's like, are you out of your mind, dude? That's what they were saying to me. Like, what niche is
And
that?
yeah,
Well,
it works.
it
It
worked. And,
works.
you have those abilities for you to recognize that you were so excited that people were actually listening to you and your voice.
Right.
That is the relief of it. But in reality, you're getting it from the students or any of those programs that you just talked about. Anyway, this is just another fulfillment element for you, right?
No, yes. And it's great that you just said that, because I tell people who want to write a book, it has to be a labor of love, because it's a
Right.
beast. It is incredibly hard. You have to go into writing a book not thinking you're going to become a millionaire from it.
Right.
Like, I feel so incredibly blessed and grateful and lucky that my books have done well. But it's a tough industry, man. And I think as long as you go in it knowing it's for you and it's personal fulfillment, you said that perfectly, because that's what it needs to be. And then it's icing on the cake if in fact the book soars and then winds up doing well.
And then all the
For sure.
publishers that rejected your ideas.
They come running after you.
Exactly. And
it's a great feeling.
That's your last laugh. But for you, just on that point on your brand, let's get to today's show, because again, where people don't understand, when you talk to a broadcasting student coming out, I was a broadcasting major, at Cronkite at ASU, a great broadcasting school, blah, blah, blah. Everyone, I'm going to be on the Today Show. I'm going to do this. I'll be on Good Morning America.
Right.
And you're going, right. Okay. Right. And when there's a friend of mine on Good Morning America, Michael Strahan, and I've talked to him about the brand. This is on brand for you. And we've talked about, we were driving to play golf, and that was one of the conversations. Had this great conversation. And so it comes back to your brand of how Today's Show, because one, you have huge audience that in that time slot, again, just everything you talked about is a great connection. Today's Show connects with both, a prevalent female driven audience with male audience.
Yes.
You have to be non-threatening female. You have to be pleasant, that both male, female want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
Somebody they want to hear back because you've touched their lives. Well, you have all that background. So I'm framing this to say that's a great brand for your brand. How did you find yourself getting to that?
So it was such an organic journey for me. I never, ever had aspirations to be on television. And I never thought that there was a career for me coming from a healthcare perspective in media ever.
Right.
And so it was the books that did it for me, and totally by accident. So I come out with this Complete Idiot's Guide to Total Nutrition.
Right.
It's at a time when people are starting to take food very seriously, much more so than like calories. If I lower my calories, I'm going to lose weight. Now it's about fueling my body with the right foods helps me to boost my energy and to drive down cholesterol and nurture my heart health and think more clearly and lower my risk for cancer. So people are really putting a lot of thought into the science behind food. The book starts selling really well. I'm elated. I'm walking into Barnes and Nobles and I'm seeing displays for my Total Idiots book. Again, I'm an idiot writer. And I'm working at Mount Sinai, and I'm working in East Harlem, and I'm doing my private practice. And I'm so happy. I love my jobs. I love what I do. I love my clients and my patients. And then ABC calls me. It was The View. Calls me and asks me, the producer has my book and asks me to come in and do a segment on television. Scott, I do not do television.
Right.
I was such a nervous wreck. I
Right.
almost puked on my food display. I mean, I was terrible. I was terrible. But the segment was super popular and they saw that. And so suddenly what happened was The View started calling me on a weekly basis to come in. And like anything else, you get calmer and you get better and you figure it out. So it was way outside my comfort zone, but I loved the fact that I was able in just a matter of minutes to touch so many people with a
Right.
wealth of health, so to speak. And from that, I ended up getting a stint on, it was at the time, it was Regis and Kelly, although
Right.
I've been on with Mike and Kelly. And then the Today Show was tracking me. And when the Today Show called me, it was really quite a surreal moment because I had grown up with the Today Show as wallpaper in my house. You know, I thought Katie Couric was my best friend. And, you know, at the
Jane
time it was
Pauley.
Kate.
Right. Right.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
these were
Yeah.
my people. And
Right.
so that's how I started doing the Today Show. And it was a crazy moment. You know, I had to get an agent and I had to get a manager. I was a clinician. It was so funny. And my husband and I were like laughing at the thought of getting an entertainment attorney and all of these things. But, you know, I
Yeah.
remain a health practitioner at heart. And I really think, you know, it goes back to the beginning of our conversation. The reason I have some chops with delivering messages of health from a media platform is because of my foundation in clinical. You know, I spent such a chunk of my career working with real people. So I could
Right.
sort of anticipate what works and definitely what doesn't work because I have flopped on my butt with health messages in the real world so many times. And, you know, my father always says, every failure is the beginning of a new success. And I love that because to me, what that means is learn from your mistakes. And every time I would give a piece of advice and it would fall flat,
Right.
I would learn from it and I would dissect it and I would figure out how to freshen it up and repackage it so that it would resonate. Yeah, and that's how like the Today Show started. And if you could imagine, I am with the Today Show, Scott, for 16 years. That's how old I am.
Crazy. Exactly. You start when you're 2, so it's pretty good. You know, the amazing element of what you do on that role each time you come back, and they've had hosts evolve,
I've
but
been through a lot of hosts.
a lot of hosts. But what happens, you are that kind of reality checkpoint. When you come on the set and you're doing your piece, the audience can also feel grounded and comfortable.
Thank you for
You're
that.
the version of healthy comfort food because they can relate to you. They know that they can trust you, that you're going to come up with an idea they know you're going to be healthy. You're not going to say, you know, after you have that kale salad, why not put down that extra pizza? You know, as much as people would love to hear you say that, not to say that you don't have a slice of pizza every now and then,
I love
but
pizza.
the comfortability of knowing that you're there, whatever this segment is to talk about is that comfort. You're their comfort food.
Thank you so much for saying that because it's so important for me to be able to communicate to people that you don't have to give up the foods that you love. And like, I get it. It needs to be delicious and we're not going to compromise and life is short. So if I can show people how to enjoy their mac and cheese, so it's still ooey and gooey and their pizza, but we're piling it with some vegetables on top, or even like Boston cream pie and chocolate fudge cake. And I did cheesecake. I did cheesecake brownie bites last week on the show. You know, all of the foods that we love, there is a way to make them better so that you don't have to feel bad about them and you can eat them any night of the week
And
and feel
those
great.
recipes, mind you, are in your newsletter and also on your website.
That you can have access to anything and everything. It's all there. And everything is not for everybody, but I'm telling you, there will be something that people will find that will get their mouth watering and they'll say, hey, you know what? I can do that. I can do that. And it's not about being perfect. It's about just being better.
How do you make that connection to the next generation? When I talk to my daughters and they'll talk about TikTok, and in my, when I'm doing events, and clients will say, yeah, we should have this influencer and this TikTok star. And I have no idea. My mindset is, if TikTok went away, most of these people are flipping burgers somewhere, because it's like, they're amazing at creating content, but they're not amazing at having the background. But then there become these humongous celebrities, or they're
Right.
paid astronomical sums of money because people want access to large sums of people. You have a role right now, whether it be in your various platforms, your Amazon stuff, your Instagram, your newsletter, your website, those formats of platforms. How do you have to think about reinventing something so that way you can then hit Instagram or hit TikTok and try to affect that crowd that watches that to go to you and your
Every
brand?
single day. Every single day, I am trying to come up with fresh, delicious, creative inventions. And that's why I love my job so much, because I don't
Right.
want to be bored, right? So it keeps me on my feet. I'm just constantly looking for the next thing. And I will never be status quo. And so what I find is, if you are authentic and you deliver super interesting, manageable, delicious creations,
Right.
they will come. And so when I look at my demo, which is really exciting, it's all over the place. So I have 3 kids also, and my greatest joy is when so I have a 22-year-old, a 25-year-old, and a 27-year-old. And when they send me texts from their friends who are showing them pictures of things that they got off of my Instagram or Facebook or website or out of my cookbooks that they've made and they're so proud of, I mean, that fills my heart with
Right. Because
so much joy.
you've definitely hit the mark, not
That's
just
right.
business wise, but as the core of who you are.
Right. And also, like, I think the younger generation, they seek out smarts.
Right.
They can smell when somebody's not authentic, or like
Right.
an influencer is just an influencer without any credentials or juice. And
Right.
so, if they find you and they really like what they see, they will become loyal followers. And then it's nice because it swells and they have their own momentum, because, that Fabergé commercial, they tell 2 friends and 2 friends and 2 friends. And suddenly you have like this entire posse of 18 to 25-year-olds that can't get enough of all of your goodies. And they also care about health.
Right.
It's a generation of foodies, but also they're passionate about nutrition and health and being on the top of their game as well. So I think it's the perfect storm in a good way.
Right. Well, to me, that really, your ride, your journey has not really, I mean, as much as it's evolved, because it's evolved, it hasn't, because it's still the same girl that's passionate about nutrition and trying to make a difference and changing how her family eats.
I
So,
love what I have the best job. Scott, I
right.
know you think you have the best job,
No, I
but
don't say
I
that.
have the best. Maybe
I'm
we're
saying
tied.
you have the best job.
I
And
love my
I'm the
job.
goofball that when people say that to me, they're like, wow, you did this and you're playing golf, or you went this and you were on the beach. And I'm like, yeah, that's my little kind of hideaways. But when I really want to be passionate about it, is like what you're doing, you're affecting someone's life. The things that I do that actually I feel like I'm helping people, that's the most gratifying. You do that on a daily basis. So
Yeah.
that makes your job that much more important to someone like me, because I always am marveling at people who can positively affect other people.
Oh, thank you. And I'm
Yeah.
just going to boomerang it back to you for a minute, because what you do is you're interviewing people
Right.
from all different walks of life, and you're getting them to share their pearls of wisdom with all of your listeners. So you actually are doing that as well. So don't sell yourself short, Scott.
I'm always of the belief, someone asked me last week, I was doing an event and someone asked me, how'd you get started? And I'm like, how far back do you want to go? And they're like, I said, I got lucky getting into broadcasting when I was 16 years old, because my baseball coach was trying to hit on a girl. And he said, hey, you seem to know so much about basketball. Can you do these interviews for me? And I'm like, yeah. Like thinking, is this like a trick question? Took me to a game. And he said, hey, you just go get these interviews at a radio station in New Jersey, WPST. He said, get these interviews and I'll pay you. And he paid me some like whatever. And to your point earlier, I'm interviewing someone like all these NBA players, and I'm getting paid to ask them questions that I'm thinking, I'm like 16 years old. And they're like looking at me like, how old are you?
It's like Almost Famous.
Yeah, but right? I'm like, exactly. I was that exact character. I mean, so when I see Almost Famous, or Cameron Crowe, I'm thinking to myself, dude, I can relate.
That was you. That was you.
Now, going to Studio 54 when you're 16 that's a different podcast and a different conversation.
But by the way, I would have what to contribute to that one as well.
There you go. See? And so to me, it's the affecting of people's lives. To me, I'm the real life. I would categorize myself as the real life Forrest Gump with the slightly higher IQ. That's how I would describe myself. Everybody's got the niche. You're the class valedictorian. You're the smart girl. I'm that goofball. Like, oh, that guy's such a goofball. So I'm happy to say that.
Well, by the way, whatever it took to get you to where you are, I am so happy to be here and chatting with you. So thank you for having me on the show.
Let's just, before you go, Joy Bauer's newsletter is on joybauer.com.
Right. So easy. All you need to do is you put in your email. If you go to joybauer.com, JOYBAUER.com, you'll see there's a square for the newsletter. You just put your email in and you're signed up. It's free. Twice a week, you get inspiration of new recipes and all sorts of kitchen health hacks and things. It's a fun newsletter. It really is.
And then how does that tag into your Instagram?
So Instagram is at Joy Bauer, again, JOYBAUER.
Okay.
And I should also say Facebook is at Joy L. Bauer. Somebody had already taken Joy Bauer. Scott, they wanted me to pay like $20,000 for my own name. So I said, forget it. I'm going to add my middle initial. So, but with my social media platforms, every single day, I'm adding new recipes and having fun with reels and videos and all sorts of things. And I also should let people know that I read every single comment. And so if anybody has any requests that, maybe they want me to healthify a special family recipe for an upside down pineapple crumb cake, I don't know, whatever it may be, some sort of chili, bring it on. Because I will get busy in my kitchen and I will do a version for you. I just love it so much. My kids call me the mad scientist in the kitchen.
Well, I'm going to get you a copy of my book that I did with my buddy John Rizzi years ago, our golf book called The Signature Dishes of Golf. And I want you to take a look at these recipes and go,
I can't wait.
This is going to be the healthy version of this golf comfort food. Now it's that would be compelling because some of that stuff now I can't eat. Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm going to do
cholesterol, and I'm going, I can't eat.
I'm going to do it only if you'll write me a love note in the, in the cover, in the inside cover. You send me that book. I'm going to flip through. I'm going to find something that is so over the top, and I'm going to make a joyful, healthy version of it and wow your taste buds. Game on.
The challenge has been made and I love it. So Joy Bauer, thank you so much. So good to meet with you and visit with you today and hear your journey. I love it because it lets any boy or girl who's in high school wanting to make a difference. You could do a lot of different ways to get to the finish line, and she's not at her finish line, but she is inspiring others, and that's Joy Bauer. So thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much, Scott. I had a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to getting your book. You're so awesome.
Thank you kindly, and we'll see you the next time on The Path Here. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to write us on thepathhere.com to have one of your questions featured on a future episode. You can follow me on Instagram at Scott Savlo. If you want to send us a tweet or follow us on Instagram, it's at The Path Here Podcast. Hey, I'm Scott Savlov, and you've been listening to The Path Here.